into a bag of flour for somebody or going to a bakery or something. It's pretty neat.
Wheat is grown on more acres of land worldwide than any other crop. The U.S. is one of the leaders in wheat production, with farmers harvesting over 2 billion bushels in 2012. But for Eric and farm worker Jack Reeder, just because it's popular doesn't mean it's easy to grow.
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears, essentially, that just goes into even hoping that it's going to come out of the ground. A lot of people, I think, miss that a little bit.
Natural challenges like wind, rain, and hail could spell disaster for this very fragile crop.
Even if the wheat stands, it loses quality over time. If it gets rained on, the kernel expands and then it shrinks back down when it dries, and that causes it to lose quality.
Like most other crops, wheat starts as a seed, but these seeds are planted in the fall, not the spring. The wheat takes hold, then goes dormant through the winter months, surviving the cold, snow, and ice.
It's a lot of manpower, it's a lot of machinery. We stick it in the dirt and hope to God that it grows.
It continues to grow in the spring until midsummer, when it's ready to be harvested with a combine.
The simplest test that we do, I would call the bite test. And I'll sort of simulate what the combine would do, which is lightly grind the kernels out of the head, and then it will blow air across it to get the chaff out, leaving just the kernels like that. And I'll just bite it, and if the kernel is hard and crunchy, it's dry and ready for harvest.
Timing is critical. It must be harvested before it gets wet from summer rains.
It's a finished product now. If it's dry enough in the field, the combine does an adequate job of cleaning it that it can go directly to the flour mill.
Eric's wheat doesn't have to go far. Wilkins Rogers Mills in Ellicott City is the state's only remaining commercial flour mill. It continues to produce powdery perfection in the form of wheat flour.
I think people would be very surprised to know the way wheat is milled. It's a very tiny grain run through a complex series of rolls and sifters. We're using big pieces of equipment to do very small things. I think that most people don't realize how complex that is.
But it's that complexity that makes milling wheat so amazing. The mill can grind 8,000 bushels of wheat every day, and 1 bushel can yield over 40 pounds of flour. When the grain comes off the truck, it's immediately sorted and cleaned. Once it's tested for quality, it can be sent to dry. Once the grains are dry, they're milled and sifted. The final product is the familiar bags you're probably used to seeing in the grocery stores. Wilkins Rogers Mills produces about 16,000 pounds of flour each hour. But without the help of local farmers, the mill would go silent. The mill gets most of its wheat from farmers in central Maryland, purchasing a staggering 1.5 million bushels of wheat each year. Farmers like Eric and Jack like knowing their grain is staying local. And like a chef tasting fine cuisine, Eric enjoys an old-fashioned taste test.
Just like crackers without the salt.
To make sure his wheat is the best it can be.
And I sample plenty of grain out of the trailer when I'm harvesting, chew it up and eat it. If you're hungry, there's plenty to eat in the combine or the trailer.
It's extremely gratifying to be, the guy out here harvesting the plant and then going to the supermarket on a Sunday morning and buying a loaf of wheat bread. I mean, it's extremely gratifying to know that you had a hand in that.
The flour from Wilkins Rogers is trucked to grocery stores throughout the Mid-Atlantic.
And by the way, are you a fan of Italian food? If you are, check this out. A bushel of wheat makes about 42 pounds of pasta, or 210 servings of spaghetti. And what's a pasta dinner without a good glass of wine? If you want to enjoy a bottle made right here in Maryland, you have 400 different ones to choose from. Al Spoler is doing some tasting in this week's The Local Buy. Al?
There's more than 60 wineries in Maryland, and many of them are on the 6 different wine trails that crisscross the state. And those trails are well-beaten paths that lead to farms that are rich in flavor and history. Today we're visiting Perigeaux Vineyards in St. Leonard, part of the Patuxent Wine Trail in southern Maryland. Owner and winemaker John Barron started this vineyard in 2001.
Guests may not come down this far into Maryland for one or two wineries. They will come down for several wineries and actually make a day of it or even a weekend of it.
The Maryland wine trails are really great. I love them. It's a great way to get out and see a whole lot of beautiful countryside, to visit the wineries and the vineyards, and to find out what's going on in the Maryland wine industry. I think you're going to be surprised. Now, there's a couple things that you're going to need to enjoy yourself: a really good map and a designated driver. When you go, grab a passport and get it stamped. Each vineyard has a unique code so you can track your progress and get discounts and invites to exclusive wine events. Thank you very much. John, I've always thought that Perigeaux has one of the prettiest vineyards here in Maryland. It's just a pleasure to visit here.
We work pretty hard at it. We have a crew of about 6 people who spend every day during the week out here.
So John, what do we have growing here? These are pretty.
Thank you. These are Merlot grapes. The vines are about 9 years old. They were planted when they were 2.
What are these big boys?
Those are Zinfandel grapes.
Are you kidding me?
No, those are Zinfandel.
You know, this is my favorite wine, Zin. And look at those. Those are beautiful. And here's where all the magic happens. Winemaking is equal parts farming and chemistry. And for those people who want to try their hand at vinification, the rewards eventually can be quite sweet. So John, we've picked the grapes and we bring them down here. What's going to happen next?
After the grapes are harvested and they come to the cellar, they're destemmed and crushed, and then they are pressed in our basket press.
Right.
The whites will then be fermented in the stainless steel tanks.
Oh, this is one of them right here. A nice temperature controlled, right?
Absolutely. Temperature controlled for all the tanks.
And the reds?
And then the reds are actually fermented in the oak barrels.
Now, John, this is a huge investment in money and in time, and a big chunk of your life is going into that. Why are you doing it?
Probably for the love of wine more than anything. Also for the beauty of the vines. There's nothing like working in your own vineyard and at the end of the day watching the sunset from the top of the hill, drinking the fruits of your labor.
This is very familiar to me. It's good Cab Franc. I'm getting kind of a smoky raspberry thing, a little iron in there. Very French in style, really nice.
Very French, very light.
One of the really great things about wine is how well it pairs up with so many different foods and so many different flavors. And one of the great classics, of course, is wine and cheese. So John, what do we have here?
Well, Al, we have a local goat cheese and some brie, and we're going to be pairing it with our estate-grown Zinfandel.
I'm going to give it a try. Well, that's good cheese. Wow, that's exquisite.
Thank you.
Now, if you'd like to visit the Maryland Wine Trails, just head for our website, mpt.org/farm, for a listing of local wineries and outings around the state. For the Local Buy, I'm Al Spoler. Joanne?
Thanks, Al. And for those of you at home, be sure to check out our website for more information on the Maryland Wine Trail. And while you're there, send us a comment or leave us an idea. And snail mail is okay too. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter for lots of behind-the-scenes photos. Now hold on a second, we're not done yet. Did you get a chance to guess our thingamajig? This is called a press cake tool. So years ago, when they were making wine, they used to use vertical barrels to press the grapes. And once all the juice was pressed out of the grapes, what was left was called a press cake. And they would use this tool to break it up so they could use it for different things like fertilizer. So I hope you guessed that one. Life on the farm is always changing and never boring. Check us out next time as we get a chance to meet the folks who feed our state. I'm Joanne Clendenning. Thanks for watching.
Major funding for Maryland Farm and Harvest was made possible in part by the Maryland Grain Producers Utilization Board, investing in sound science and smarter farming to support safe and affordable food, feed, and fuel, and a healthy bay. Additional funding was provided by Maryland's Best, good for you and Maryland. Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit, lending support to rural America. The Maryland Soybean Board and Soybean Checkoff Program, progress powered by farmers. Marpidco, helping to sustain food and fiber enterprise for future generations.
The Maryland Agricultural Education Foundation, promoting the importance of agriculture in our daily lives.
And by the Maryland Association of Soil Conservation Districts, the Mid-Atlantic Dairy Association, the Delmarva Poultry Industry Incorporated, the Maryland Nursery and Landscape Association, the Arthur W. Purdue Foundation, the Maryland Farm Bureau Service Company, Willard Agri-Service Company, and by